child pornography, and we're child pornographers. And they picked the Netherlands because that's the center of pedophilia in Europe.
So what happened if it prospered?
Well, the judge, I sent in a whole stack of images of children in Playboy being sexualized and being sexually raped and so forth, and the judge ruled in my favor. What a surprise. And he said everything that I had said was completely correct, and Playboy was producing child pornography. So they've been doing this to the American public, to people who were reasonably innocent when they looked at these men. They all are going to look at a girl.
Are you alone
magazine.
in this fight, or do they have a group that would police all of these pornographic materials? Now, and the internet is just horrendous, you know.
Yeah, the internet's making it a lot worse. But there are people, following now, and I'm at the university, Liberty University, in the School of Law as a visiting professor. So I'm beginning now to spread this to new students and so forth. And yeah, we're looking for as much support as possible, because you have to remember, Kinsey represents big money. I mean, Kinsey not only represents big money in terms of International Planned Parenthood and UNESCO and this whole group, this whole cult.
And the pornography is also a $12 billion or $20 billion.
Oh, massive.
Yeah,
and it's,
industry, right?
And it's very much now connected with big pharmacology, because big pharma now is making a fortune on not only the Viagra, because we're increasing impotence like crazy globally, worldwide.
This is the adverse effects of pornography and masturbation.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about bringing kids up from their very young ages to be.
And the families suffer. The marital couple, you know.
How do they survive that? Most couples can't survive that. It's this delusion that they are embedded with when they're looking at the pornographic material, and it's shooting up their adrenaline response like crazy. People will always have a higher response to anything that scares them, to anything that causes shame associated with sex. That's going to be higher. I talked with some couples. I was starting with a couple once, and she said, the wife said, I think I don't love John anymore. I said, why? And she said, well, we went to a dirty movie. I'm more responsive, than I am to John. And John was thinking the same about her. And I said, look, when you trust your mate, you are not. It's not some enchanted evening when he sees me across the room and I'm thinking I might have a pimple. Maybe he'll.
Right.
Then your state of arousal is intense because you're filled with fear. You're filled with anxiety. But if you love someone and they love you, then the intensity of quote orgasm arousal decreases.
But if your partner is
situation,
I agree with you. But when your partner is so hooked up and addicted to pornographic materials, then the wife would be insecure.
Oh,
like you're no longer satisfying your husband, but he has to resort to
Look, you saw
materials.
all these beautiful models, who are now divorcing their husbands. These big famous models. The guy is sitting there looking day after day, night after night at some imagery that he gets on the machine.
Whether you like it or not, it's programmed there.
Absolutely programmed. Can't get rid of it. There it is. Press the button and it's going.
Part is they don't get rid of those magazines.
No,
all of those
cling to them.
Playboy magazines.
They
have a collection.
Absolutely.
And then they pass it on. So
it's
big
terrible.
problem.
It's big problem. Yeah. And the kids growing up with that. I mean, even years ago, youngsters weren't exposed to this. But now with the internet,
the result of also early pregnancies and unwanted pregnancies, right?
Absolutely.
Leading to abortion, right?
There's another big money maker for big pharma. You've got abortion, and from abortion you have body parts harvesting of the aborted baby, the aborted fetus, like the aborted baby. And so you have body parts harvesting. You have all of the money going into Viagra that people are spending because they're increasingly impotent. And who do they blame? Do they blame the pornographers? No, they blame their wives, the girlfriends, and the sex crimes off the charts.
They always blame the women.
Yeah. And sex crimes are off the charts. Don't miss that one. So here with these programs,
RH bills,
allegedly health bills. Forget it. There's nothing healthy about that. The evidence, the settled science is clear. Every measure every measure of dysfunction.
You've been there, right? You've been there. You've
I've been there.
experienced it.
It's going to go off the charts in the Philippines. It's not only going to cause increased what we call illegitimacy, out of wedlock pregnancy. It's not only going to cost an increase in syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, HPV, all that. It's also going to cost in the vaccinations and the health to these children who are being vaccinated when they shouldn't be. And it's going to cost a fortune in the sex crime rate, which is also going to go off the charts. Yeah.
It is going to attack on our family.
Absolutely.
Definitely marital meltdowns.
Absolutely.
So we'll be going on the next topic, and stay with us because we will be moving towards an understanding of pornography. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
By far, the most disturbing evidence against the Kinsey reports is the information pertaining to the sexual behavior of children. This was something noted in the 1950s by Professor Albert Hobbs, who wrote that, according to Kinsey, a child molester may have contributed favorably to a child's later sociosexual development. The child sexual data was more fully exposed by Dr. Judith Reisman in the 1980s, who brought the even more disturbing allegation that Kinsey had trained multiple pedophiles to molest children while using stopwatches to record so-called scientific data.
This man, this Kinsey, had been responsible for the rapes and tortures of hundreds, actually it looks like thousands of children.
4-year-old, 26 orgasms in 24 hours. Tell me, Phil, does a baby sleep? Tell me if this is scientific. A baby sleeps for 8 hours? And you tell me how you get 26 orgasms for 24 hours.
We've got to be able to get a word in edgewise.
Just a minute.
Sounds like a guest for the Donahue show.
And you know what Gebhardt said to me? You know what Dr. Gebhardt said? He wrote me a letter, which I wish you had up there too, in which he said that oral and manual techniques were used on the children. Now, Phil, I'm going to say that once more. I'm going to say that once more. And if I'm wrong, let them sue me. He said oral and manual techniques were used on those children.
Welcome back to Heart Talk. We're still here with Dr. Judith Reisman, and we are so happy that we have been covering a lot. Like the first portion was about sex education, and this time we'd like to zero in on pornography and the negative effects of this to human behavior. Right?
Sure.
You have considered Playboy magazine and the Hustler, but now we are being threatened also on the internet, and the children now, they go inside their bedrooms and they close and lock the rooms and they go into this, and then also we don't know husbands, they have dens, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And then the wives are in the room and we don't know what's going on, you know.
You're completely correct. And I mean, I've interviewed I don't know how many women and some men, by the way, whose spouse, you know, they're asleep at night, spouse wake up, spouse isn't beside them in the bed, go downstairs, and there's the spouse, you know, addicted to pornography on the web. And one of the big issues I get involved in has to do with child custody, because once you have an addicted spouse, they start innocently, but they're curious, you know. And so they start with images of adult women, but they're going to drop down those ages pretty rapidly, pretty quickly. And it's going to go down to the semi-teen, depending upon the laws in your country. It'll go down to these so-called teen sort of girls, and then it slips into the children, and we get more and more children. We had 5,300, I think it was, Pentagon officials who were caught having, buying child
And they're
pornography.
supposed to be role models.
Role models. We've lost a lot of role models. We had the president of American University. We had the psychologist who was running the whole department at American University. Universities all over the country are being afflicted.
One official also was caught showing off his body, right? Having internet sex. Right?
Oh, all of the above. A judge was involved in the same thing. Was supposed to adjudicate a crime, internet crime. His website, he had worse material on his own website than the one he was going to adjudicate. So you can tell how he would have ruled. So the pornography is afflicting everyone, everywhere, and it's very directly involved with child sexual abuse. No question about it.
Internet sex. Too.
Oh, of course, and a lot of women are getting into this chat stuff, you know, which has become a big problem as well. So when you begin to combine all these things, you're talking about a tsunami kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, for society, certainly for any civilized society.
It's really alarming, you know, and people don't realize the negative effects of this, right? For example, let's talk about masturbation too, right? So it could lead to fornication and adultery, right? And then eventually it would graduate to impotence, right?
Well, when somebody's looking at pornography, for the most part, they're going to be masturbatory people. I mean, they're acting this out. That's what they're doing. As they used to say in the old days, playing with yourself kind of thing. Excuse me, but I mean, you know, but anyway.
Acting it out, right?
Right, acting it out. And so that's what they're doing. Now, as I said, if you're, on top of that, if you're decreasing the ages of these people you're, quote, acting out with, that means you're one step away from doing it to a child in that next room. Incest is going off the charts, no question about it. Not just the parent committing incest, but an older brother, an older sister. I've dealt with homosexual guys who are in homosexual recovery and who thought that they were homosexual at birth, because that's one of the Kinsey lies, who thought that they were homosexual at birth. And when I began to probe a little bit, we find out that he's been acted out on by his older brother. The older brother reading, or they don't read, consuming the Playboys and the penthouses in those years that were in the closet. So the older brother's looking at all that, fantasizing,
experiments on the sister.
Experiments, or on the brother.
On the brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whatever. Look, one of the reasons that little boys become the experimental subjects is that a lot of older siblings think, oh, the little sister's going to tell. You know, she's going to go in and tell on me. And besides which, she might get a
It's their little game.
Yeah. So if they act out on the brother, and these are often innocent kind of kids. Look, we're the ones that are allowing this poison into their lives. It isn't that, they're not the ones that created it. We as the adults are the ones that have done that to the children. So yes, the children act out dysfunctionally. Yes, they become criminals. We have youngsters being taken.
Eventually they become serial killers too.
That has, oh sure, you saw Ted Bundy's interview, I think, years ago, and he said, look, it all started when I, was 12 years old, 13 years old. He said, I found this magazine in the store, and the only one they were selling at that time would have been Playboy, by the way. So there was never anything innocent about Playboy. It was your gateway drug to all
Well, you
the rest.
went through so much research and
Department
clinical
of Justice,
studies
yeah.
on this.
One of the things we have to look at is the way Kinsey labeled 196 boys by, he called it 6 types, all under age 12. He said there was fainting and collapse amongst 3% of the boys. He said there were 8% of these boys were fighting the partner. He said there was sadism and hysteria amongst 5% of these little boys. And 17% of these little boys, and this is all on page 160 and 161 of his volume, 17% were involved in convulsions and cries, and 45% twitching and spasms. All of this was defined by Alfred Kinsey as a sexual climax. Now, no one calls this a sexual climax except a sadomasochistic pedophile. No one. And that is the basis of human sexuality education globally. We have been following the directives in the canon of a vicious child sexual abuser and wondering why we have the kinds of sexual problems we have today. It's time to examine where we learned about sex from, and that will go back to Alfred C. Kinsey, who described excruciating pain, I quote, and who said that babies may even scream if the movement is continued or the penis touched, that the babies will fight away from the partner. But, said he, they derive definite pleasure from the situation, quote, end quote. That is a sexual psychopath, that is a primitive pedophile, and that is the father of human sexuality education worldwide.
We'd like to explain to our audience out there the chemical structure of the brain when you are inciting them and giving them imagery and pornographic
sure. Very simplistically, the American Society of Addiction has recently identified, after a 4-year study, identified sex as an addiction, pornography as an addiction, okay, just like any other,
like cocaine, drugs.
Like cocaine, look, pornography was never like a drug, it always was a drug, it is a drug. It's an endogenous drug, it's something that we self-produce.
It's evil.
You self-medicate, yeah? So what we're looking at is, in 0.3 of a second, actually less, an image goes from the eye through to the visual cortex and is implanted in the brain. It's implanted
the right side of the brain.
Yeah, you're talking about the emotions, you're talking about amygdala, you're talking about the limbic system, and adrenaline is shooting up at the same time, especially with the youngsters. So the human brain doesn't mature till age 21 to 25. We know that for sure. We always knew it, but now science says so too. And what you've done then, especially in sex education, by the way, you're going into the school, into these children, their brains are not cognitively designed to deal with these kinds of stimuli.
You can't plant tree on soft soil.
Exactly. Exactly. And so those kids are being aroused by these stimuli. They will go out and they will try experimenting either on others or on themselves, and it becomes our responsibility. It is our fault. It's on our watch that these children are being overstimulated, and they cannot bring cognitive planning, realization of consequences to this experience. Look, most children in their own brains are thinking, if this was really bad, then it wouldn't be allowed, because they have a respect for the adult population. If this was really wrong, it wouldn't be allowed. Well, if they're being trained with this material, then how can they believe that it's really bad? And so they act out on it, and we get huge problems.
That is really so alarming, right?
Yes.
So alarming, yeah. Eventually they become offenders too.
Oh,
like
sure, of course.
Rapists, incest,
Our it's off the charts. Our rate of child sexual abuse is off the charts.
Also another thing that worries me is the conscience. We don't know anymore what is right and what is wrong.
No.
Because when it's presented to you in sex education, and definitely no values are being thrown in, or virtues at all, so and the Christian values. So I'm saying it is so alarming, it's really so alarming, and I hope the people out there can really go into more detailed information, like look into that Kinsey report. It's considered as one of the worst books published in American history.
Voted as such, by Human Events in the United States. It was voted as the worst, the most dangerous.
Well, it promotes falsehood and a lot of lies.
The claim is that our greatest generation, that was very virginal, was just they were just a bunch of hypocrites that were really lying. They were really doing all these bizarre things. Well, if they were, then our STD rates would have been off the charts. Then when contraception was illegal for unmarried people, and when abortion was absolutely illegal, and so we know that.
And the family life was strong at the time.
Yes, of course it was.
Stable.
Of course it was. You had husband usually at home and a wife, and
hardly any suicides.
Oh, very few suicides, and now we're up. We have juvenile suicides again, who are off the chart. That are off the charts, and wherever you're going to find pornography, which I define as what's really used in a lot of sex education materials. Wherever you're going to find pornography, you're going to find sex crimes and sex dysfunctions and sex diseases. And in the Philippines, as we have spent billions. It's cost us billions in the United States since we've had sex education. You'll be destroyed financially, much less every other way. No state, no society can afford financially, spiritually, and in terms of its civility to pay the price that you're going to pay for this
RH bill.
Yeah, your RH bill.
And then also they always use the excuse of overpopulation, and that it's also Planned Parenthood and all that. But really, it does nothing but attack on the innocence of our children, right?
Yeah, you know, the whole idea of overpopulation is a very interesting one. I mean, United States of America, we had
It's a myth.
It's a myth.
Definitely.
Absolutely a myth. And not only is it a myth, but it's a myth that's so destructive, because when you have, I mean, my grandparents had 13 children, you know. Most people had massive numbers of children, and they had no money. But the
God
children
provided.
Yeah, God provided. The children felt obligated to try to work and help the families, you know. And so societies were built that way. Farms were run that way.
But look what's happening to Singapore, in Russia, and in Germany, you know, the graying population, right?
Oh, you're getting a nothing population at this
and
point.
the latest report that eventually at 2030, you know, we could be one of the countries that's really progressing, you know, one of the emerging markets, only because of our growing population, like China and Brazil, right? And India also.
Yeah. And when you don't have that anymore, then you've depleted your resources. Human beings are resources.
They are our wealth.
They are your wealth. You just have to create a structure in your society that allows them to contribute to the wealth of the society. That's pretty critical.
Right. Well, let's go back to pornography, because this is our concern. It's so rampant